The moment is fast approaching. The convergence of apathy and evil, oblivion and conquest, is soon upon us. Three critical issues, directly related to our nation's survival, are coming together to present one of the greatest challenges the United States will ever face, if, in fact, it survives. Externally, the threat comes in the form of a violent and intolerant theocratic ideology that quests to rule the world, expunging or making subservient all other religious and moral dogmas known to man. In its wake, it leaves indiscriminate death by the millions, using the innocent and the ignorant to facilitate its conquest through fear and intimidation. For those who are conquered, for those who survive, an all-encompassing existence of servitude and oppression. Internally, forces antithetical to the American philosophy, to our true Judeo-Christian roots, are using our own system of government and our electoral process to move our nation incrementally away from its charter as a constitutional republic, fundamentally transforming the United States of America from a constitutional republic to a democracy, of which our founders and framers warned, then to democratic socialism, to the totalitarian elitism of Marxism. This American fifth column infects our land with a progressive ideological cancer, killing liberty and freedom in its path. Yet these threats are not new to our country. We have faced them down before. We have, in the past, stared into the violent and deceptive eyes of evil and come out stronger for the experience. So why are these forces so potent today? What makes this moment in time so different than in the past? Simple. Today, we the people are complicit in our own demise. Our nation has become so constitutionally illiterate, so oblivious to the worth and value of our God-given rights, bestowed by our Creator as inalienable and enshrined in our charters of freedom, that we willingly abdicate them, casting them aside as if a burden, and facilitating the potency of the evils that confront our very existence. We the people, through apathy, through ignorance, have created our own destiny. We have created the perfect storm. Hello, and thank you for allowing me to talk to you tonight. I want to thank David and Karen, the whole Jeffers family, for allowing me this opportunity as we celebrate Eddie's life and Eddie's death. And rest assured, I am still in awe of how the Jeffers family handles this situation, in awe of their belief system. It's touching and it's humbling. In taking a look at everything that's happening since Eddie's departure from our world, I can't help but wonder if he would be even more troubled since his writing of Hope Rides Alone. If he'd be more troubled by what's happening in the world today. Certainly I am, and certainly a great many of the people that I work with and my colleagues, we are more disturbed. We see something happening. It's a convergence. I opened this short message with the Perfect Storm trailer because I truly believe it is being kicked into high gear. With the events that we are seeing in the Middle East today, with the storming of our embassies, with the use of a propaganda tool in a very innocuous film, poorly made, quite honestly, and not very popularized, not very advanced in the media until these insurrections in the Middle East and the death of a U.S. ambassador and many of the staffers that were serving to protect him. I'm seeing this convergence of radical Islamist aggression, this want to have a movement throughout the Middle East to establish dominance once again, a convergence of that ideology with the progressive ideology. And now let's remember back to World War. I'm going to talk about progressivism in a minute in order to give you the genesis, although I truly believe most of you already know it. You're very aware, and that's why you're here in the first place, celebrating Eddie's life. In World War II, we had the Nazis, we had the fascist Italians, we had the imperial Japanese, but we also had the radical Islamist element of the Axis powers. They aligned with the Nazis, not only in their thought pattern about the extermination of the Jews, but also in a global conquest. Now, granted, the Nazis would have wanted the Nazis to have the global conquest, and the Islamists wanted the Islamists to have the global conquest. But they saw each other as a vehicle to help bring about a later conflict. They had a common foe. This is something that is prevalent in the Islamic culture when we see the Sunni and the Shiites going head to head in local conflicts. When they look at the greater world, they see the great Satan and they band together. Today, with the progressive movement, which started circa the 20th century, right at the 1900s, with Woodrow Wilson and a gaggle of people that were like-minded in the decades before, we see a tyrannical, oligarchical type of ideology that says, I know best than everybody else. It's an elitist ideology. It believes that government is the solution to everything. As a matter of fact, when you go back and read some of Woodrow Wilson's writings and some of his contemporaries' writings, they despised the Charters of Freedom. They despised the Constitution. Woodrow Wilson is quoted as saying, if you wanted to understand what the Declaration of Independence was all about, disregard the preamble. Well, the preamble is the part that says we have our rights given to us by our Creator and not by government. The reason he hated the preamble was because it didn't allow him to expand the government's powers. This is the crux of the progressive movement. They believe that the Constitution is a living document. It is not. It fits all times because it limits government. And no matter where we are in any era or in any time, it still limits that government. That's what our framers wanted. They wanted to make sure that tyrannical leaders couldn't expand their power at will. That's why the checks and balances were put into the Constitution. What we're seeing today with the current administration is a full-blown progressive ideology. When you see executive orders, and yes, I understand that both sides of the aisle have used executive orders. I'm not happy about either side using executive orders to usurp the authority that is limited by the separation of powers. But when you see an administration like today's routinely using executive orders and recess appointments to move forward an agenda that moves away from Americanism and advances and expands government, that's troubling. And a lot of people don't understand why it's troubling. They don't understand it's expanding government. As a matter of fact, there's a block of people that don't even pay federal income tax that believe they are due something from the federal government, that the federal government is a provider. It was never meant to be that way. Our country was founded on the idea that personal responsibility was a good thing, and that we, as a people, should have the freedom to be able to pursue opportunities given to us by freedom, by liberty. So when we have government saying we have to provide for the least among us, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for providing for the least among us. I just think it should come from the private sector and not government mandated. We lose freedoms. Now, how does that actually jive with what's happening in the Middle East? Well, there's a story that came out just the other day that has John Podesta from the Center for American Progress and his lobbying partners, which happen to be his brother and his sister-in-law, who represent major corporations over here in the United States, and don't get me wrong, I like corporations in the United States. It's free enterprise. It's do what you have to do in order to be able to bring a product to market so that people can be served. But you have these lobbyist elements of the progressive movement. And make no mistake, the Center for American Progress is probably the crown jewel in George Soros's crown. They're over in Egypt right now, talking to leaders over there about how they can partner up with the new Islamic government there to achieve business ties. I can't help but feel something inside that says, in the end, that is not going to benefit capitalism. It's not going to benefit small business here in the United States, which is the overriding lion's share capitalist portion of our financial network. I can't help but it's being set up to move to such a global level that small business in the United States is sidelined in a great degree, allowing regulations here in the United States to choke it off so that prosperity is limited. Also, that it would be creating almost a new slave labor market. We tend to take issue with China for what they do with slave wage laborers, and Indonesia and places that don't believe in human dignity and freedom and liberty. But if this partnership is allowed to go forward, and you have the oligarchical elite in the Islamic societies making partnerships with people who have giant amounts of money, there will be another slave labor market created, because there's immense poverty throughout the Middle East. And I'm not talking about the Palestinians. If you actually look at what the Palestinians get in money every year, it's enough to make you choke. I'm talking about people who live in third world conditions throughout the Islamic world. Creating that creates a slave labor market that actually enriches the oligarchical Islamists. And with their ultimate goal being the reestablishment of a global caliphate, and if you read the Ikhwan, which was part of evidence put into the court hearings in the Holy Land Foundation trials, you will understand that is what the goal is. Then you see the progressives enabling the Islamists to be able to spread their influence throughout the Middle East by capturing their people, and then because they're entering into a financial system that is antithetical to their belief, expanding things like Sharia finance into Europe and then into the West. Once again, we are seeing the Islamists look at the progressives, and remember, progressives their ideology is based in an oligarchical form of socialism and Marxism. Nazis were socialists. Once again, we're seeing Islamists looking at socialists, read progressives in this case, as a stepping stone or a gateway to the reestablishment of their dominance in the world. This is the perfect storm, and it bothers me immensely. So, as I stand before you today, thinking of Eddie Jeffers and what he was fighting for and the belief system that he had, and all you have to do is read Hope Rides Alone and you understand what his thought process was. I wonder if he would be angry, or whether he'd be frustrated, or whether he would find that call to arms one more time. I know I have heard that call to arms. The perfect storm is potent, and it is here. And it is happening right now. The question is, what will you do to make sure that it doesn't come to fruition? I'd like to thank the Jeffers family for this opportunity to speak to you on behalf of everybody here at basicsproject.org and newmediajournal.us. I hope that you make an additional donation to the Fisher House. It's important. David, Karen, Jeffers family, I love you. God bless.